Welcome to the Building Savages podcast.
New favorite fitness podcast.
I'm your boy Terrence, aka Building Beast.
I'm Evan Perez, aka EP.
On this podcast, we talk to our fellow coaches, athletes, and everyday gym goers about health, fitness, business, entrepreneurship, self growth, and so much more. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe, or
We'll find you and make you smash the subscribe button. Hope you enjoyed today's topic.
today's topic: stress management. I actually I had a good conversation with one of my athletes a couple of days ago, and I was kind of telling like my views on stress management, and I was just like, I think a lot of people just focus on things that just aren't important,
Mm-hmm.
and the way I reason why I say important because it's like I think I'll make sure your equipment's good. Come on, sir.
I use my hands too much. My bad. I interrupted
Look,
such
hey,
a
manage your
sensitive
stress.
topic. Yeah, manage stress. Fuck.
Manage your stress. Just knocking shit
My bad.
over.
My bad. My bad.
But
I ruined it. I ruined it. I
no,
keep on.
I think a lot of people walk around and not really understanding what's important to them, right? And if you walk around not really understanding what's important to you, then you just kind of consume your stuff into things that just aren't necessary for your path or that's necessary for your mental capacity. So you start making certain things about you to you that's not really about you, if that makes sense.
I think it
So
does. I think it does. I got you.
yeah, I'll clear this up a little bit more, but it's like drama, like a lot of drama stuff you see, or even like looking through a lot of the tabloids and seeing like what's going on with a lot of things that don't really pertain to you, but you kind of make it about you. It's,
Yeah.
and I was really having that conversation. I was like, you could be making yourself anxious and you can be making yourself a lot more stressed than you have to because you're not really prioritizing things in your life that's actually like near and dear to you. One, because you're not really focusing on what's near and dear to you, and two, because you literally just don't have an idea of what's important to yourself.
No,
So
that
it's
part.
like you really got to ask yourself these questions like, okay, what is my goal? What is my intention that I want to get done? What are things that I'm striving for in life? What are things that are in my power that I can manage and that I can change? And what are things that aren't in my power that I have to adapt to? Because
Yeah.
everything we don't have the power to change. Certain things that happen or exist in life, you have to maneuver around. And if you try to make it your responsibility to change these things, you're just going to end up driving yourself crazy.
Yeah. I think I kind of I definitely understand that. I think it's one of those things where Um, I really do a good job, and people really don't. People think I don't give a shit because I usually say I don't give a shit. But the reason I do give a shit, and I know this is a lot of shit that I'm saying, so could bear with me.
A lot of shit you're giving.
A lot of shit I'm giving. But I really don't. A lot of times when I say I don't give a shit, is because it doesn't need to affect me, and I don't allow things to affect me that aren't in the scope of the things that are important to me.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, like people will be like, oh, like, this person said this and this person said that. It's like, I don't give a shit. Like, what does that have to affect me? It's not gonna, the only thing that you can control is your energy and your effort. Like, those are the things that you can control. I love saying that because if it's not the right energy, then I'm gonna make sure my energy is right. If I'm gonna control my effort in making sure that I'm gonna be high effort in everything that I do, that's important to me. So I do agree with you. I think it's about priorities and not allowing outside things to stress you out because you choose to make it your problem. I don't make shit. If it's not my problem, I won't make it. If you do need help, I do give a shit. But just know that if it's something that's going to interfere with my performance in my career, my ability to do the things that I enjoy, I don't give a shit. I'm just not gonna allow it to affect my mood and to cause me stress. So I do agree with what you're saying. Um, but I think that's just like one avenue that people often do because they enjoy. I don't think they enjoy. I think people just like to think that they're the center of the universe and that, and it's a shit way of saying it. I'm not trying to talk shit to people, but like they think that everything, they need to be a part of everything.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
they need to be a part of everything. And I think like I'm okay with living in my world. Like this is my world, these are my people. Whatever they need, like I'm okay. Like I will sacrifice my time for them because those are my people. But if it doesn't, if it interferes with anything I do, people also respect my line and my boundary because I create boundaries. That's also another thing. It's like people let people step all over their boundaries, and then they create stress with their schedule or their time management or
Yeah.
just their life because they allow too many people to step into their world without fucking even thinking about it because they have just allowed people to step over the line. Like, nah, I don't fucking do that. Like it's like a early boundary of mine when I was a kid is like you would have before phones and shit like that. You call me before you get into my house, bro. Like I hate people that just knock on my door and be like, "Oh shit, like you're here." Like people will be so excited when like a friend will just come over and be like, "Nah, bro, like I was in the middle of something. You just ruined my fucking mood by
Yeah.
being here." Like, yeah, well, so like I was raised on creating boundaries. I think this is super easy for me, but yeah, I do agree. It's
That's so
I think
important, that
it's a
boundary
great
conversation.
yeah,
Because
the boundary
a lot of people I feel like if they do create a boundary, they don't maintain the boundary. And
part,
then
yeah.
they'll stress themselves out because it's like, well, you never it doesn't for me it doesn't matter about the boundary you set, about the it matters about the boundary you maintain. You know,
That
because
part.
you can have all the intention in the world to be like, oh, well, I would never do this or I wouldn't let this happen, whatever, yada, yada, yada. And it sounds good until action starts to go in play. And then now all of your boundaries are just all over the place. And now you catch yourself stressing because you allowed something to get overstepped in the first place, knowing that you didn't have the capacity for this thing to overstep your boundary. So
Yeah, I
now
think
this starts to continue into a spiral.
that part right there, and I think it's also one of those things where like because and this is where people get a little fucked up because they're a family, they're allowed to step over this boundary, even though I create the boundary with everybody else because they are in my circle or in my world, they're allowed to step over that boundary. If people don't respect your boundaries and they create stress in your life, then those people don't respect you, even though they don't intentionally do it. I don't think people intentionally do it. But I think they just understand that I can step over this line. I'm gonna ask for help for this person. Like, nah, bro. Like that's not how I operate. Like I don't work like that. So, um, I
You know what
think
it is? Another one I got too is to kind of play off the boundary conversation is just like just because you can doesn't mean you should.
oh that
And
part too.
the reason why I'm saying that, like think of our work boundaries, right? We set our schedule the way that we can, or we set our schedule the way that we do for a specific reason. We set our training the way that we do for a specific reason. We set our weeks the way that we do for a specific reason because we know we can manage that.
Yeah,
So we might have these gaps, let's say, throughout the day where they're free time, but that doesn't mean free time that we want for someone to step in and just like take over that time.
yeah,
This exists for a reason, so I can make sure I can manage my day.
yeah,
So I can make sure I get this in. So I can make sure I take a rest here or I take this mental break here. So when I do get into, let's say, work mode or some of these other avenues that other people are involved in, I have the capacity to do that at the level that I need to because I made sure my boundaries were set in a way that I can manage whatever these activities or whatever these time slots were for me. Like my schedule, especially, I talked about when I made that schedule switch and I work from home on Mondays, yada yada. Like that was a really big change for me because it really allowed me to create even better boundaries that already existed for me within my schedule to help me manage things better. And it
mhm,
opened up a lot of capacity in other areas of my life and business wise to make things run smoother for me, to give me a more stress-free environment,
yeah.
you
That's
know? So,
that's exactly why it's called time management.
yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
why it's called time management. Like if you're
And
not
mental management. That's the other part too. You got time management, you got mental management.
exactly like it's literally you have to manage your fucking time. You have to be like the boss of making sure that things get done at a certain time. It's like one of those things where like and like you said, like my schedule is the way because for a specific reason. Like if I have a client that shows up late, like you show up late, you're missing time. Like I don't add time over because
I
then
don't
that
either.
leads into somebody else that I have to help out a little later. Leads into somebody else. If it's my fault, then it's my fault. But you show up late on me, like I'm only gonna give you the time that's remaining because like then it starts leading into time management issues with everybody else.
Yep.
Like people are paying for my time, and I am really I respect people's time, so I'm making sure that
Or
everybody gets exactly what they what not only they pay for, but what only they deserve. So yeah, I think people need to do a better job to avoid stress by managing themselves better. And I think
yeah,
the reason why I'm not saying other people is because like it's the same thing that we always talk about, or the thing that we talked about in one of the other topics is like um you can only control yourself.
yeah,
You can only control yourself. So you have to do a better time of your management. If you're bitching about not being stressed out and blaming everybody else, just understand that it's mostly your fault because you allowed these things to happen and people to step over your boundary, people to not respect your time, people you not managing properly. Like the best way to manage your stress better is to just say no.
hmm
Like, no. That's literally my favorite word after fuck. Like, no. Like, just say no to certain things that don't that that will add stress into your life. And again, like there's times to say yes to shit. I'm not saying being a no person and being a yes person, but there needs to be a balance, just like with everything else.
yeah. That part is super super important. Stress is such a there's good stress too. There's good
Yeah.
stress too. But typically when we only speak about stress, we only talk about it in like a negative light. But I do want to highlight that, going back to that boundaries conversation is just making sure you have that management over yourself, right? Like the other part that I wanted to bring up too is like we all have emotions, so we are gonna feel, but how we decide to act on our emotions is extremely big. Because every action doesn't need a reaction,
Mhm.
and all reactions don't give a positive response. So you do want to think about like, okay, whatever situation that you are presented with, some are easier to, let's say, cope with than others, but there is a consequence for every action or reaction that you do. Sometimes a good consequence, sometimes a negative consequence, but you gotta be mindful of what you might be putting yourself into based off of how you let yourself act on your emotions.
Yeah. And I think to kind of segue, and I think this is also very important, is that good your body doesn't know the difference between good stress and bad stress. It just knows
Yeah.
stress. So
Yes.
like this is why it's also very important that you guys balance and manage your time better because even though like fitness is a good stressor, it's a stress on your body. Yoga is a good stressor, it's a stress on your body. Eating that fucking having a bad diet, even having a good diet and having a bad diet or being in a caloric deficit, like is a stress on your body. Like things like that, like also play a factor. So making sure that you're recovering correctly and making sure things are managed properly, like is super important. Like having your emotions in check, having your schedule in check, making sure everybody is good, making sure you keep your world fucking in a great space. Like having the healthy balance and understanding that all stress is stress. I mean, and making sure that I think the whole grand scheme of things of over here is management, but also recovery. Like
Yeah.
recovery is super important. Making sure that you're doing the health, being as healthy as you guys can, also enjoying your life, having a social life. We talked about that shit before. We're not gonna get into it. Also recovering with your sleep, making sure your quality of sleep is fucking good. Um, Shit like that. Like I think that's super important, and making sure that you have downtime. Like even if it's meditating, even if it's whatever, like downtime is super important. That should be on your fucking schedule if you're one of those people that need to put everything on your schedule.
Yeah, time
Like
for self.
yeah,
Absolutely.
time for self, or time blocked, fucking to do whatever you want, off the phone, off whatever, like not thinking about shit.
Things that are important to you. One of the other things I wanted to bring up too is perception, man. Like perception really can change how you deal with stress or even how you view a situation, right? Like I know you know people as well that sometimes people just make things bigger than they really are
Yeah,
just because they're kind of getting in their own head about something to where it's like this situation you're blowing it up to be bigger than it needs to be, which is causing you to just spiral down into more stress than what's really in front of you.
yeah,
And then you got some people who actually like damn near looks like the world is burning in front of them, but they're just so grateful for all these other things that their perception of everything that's going on around them kind of brings them, I don't want to use the word peace, but kind of peace in that sense of like they have the wherewithal, like they're gonna make it through or they're gonna get through this situation because they're just grateful for the things that are going well opposed to the things that aren't going well. And obviously this is easier to do than say, but oh, this is easier to said than done. But I think perception really does change a lot in how you manage a lot of the things that happen to you, and kind of like that action and reaction point that I brought up a little bit earlier. If you perceive it to be negative, whether it's negative or not, it's going to impact you even more than if you change your perception and just try to see the good maybe in some of the unfavorable things that might be coming your way.
Yeah. And this is I didn't even think about this, but this is kind of this is the good way to kind of like end it is I think perception comes and negative perception and overthinking comes from the lack of being able to communicate properly. I feel a
Mm,
lot of times like people blow things up into different proportions depending on their emotional intelligence of certain things and being able to handle certain stressors and stuff like that is because like somebody says something to them and they don't know how to react because they don't know how to communicate properly.
yeah.
Like a lot of times like things uh like I was talking to my boss recently about doing X, Y, and Z, and she took something a certain way, and it caused her not to sleep right the next day until she came talk to me about it the following day. And I was like, "This is what I meant." Like, I was like, "Oh, that was it." So like you instead of just clearly trying to communicate and ask me what I meant, you took it the wrong way, and instead of communicating it like letting me communicate it to you in a different way, you took it, you left with it, you overthought it, you couldn't sleep the next day, and then the next day you have to confront me and think that I did something wrong where I actually was trying to think about doing something more in a positive way. So a lot of people think that way because they don't want to be able to be confrontational and actually get to the bottom of stuff, and then they start perceiving things wrong because they're overthinking because the communication isn't there. So I think perception negative perception comes from not being able to communicate and not being able to confront issues head on. And then once you guys can actually comfortably and amicably communicate properly, like I think that's going to be a little bit easier. And I think that all comes from like body language, speaking, having emotional intelligence, like building onto that will help people feel so less stressed out because I feel like a lot of people in the world don't know how to communicate properly because they're behind the TV, I mean, they're behind their screens, they're just communicating on emails and stuff like that. But just having good, good arguments, if that's the right word, or like you get me, like non
Yeah, like
fucking call it like fucking banter
constructive dialogue, like
thank you,
constructive
constructive
dialogue. Yeah.
dialogue, and like and sometimes being a little bit negative here and there is really good because then that gets a lot out. It gets everything out. You know exactly what's on the fucking table, and then we can move on from there. But a lot of times our perception is fucked because we communicate like
Yeah.
wrong.
And you got to have that emotional intelligence to recognize that, which is
Exactly.
a good skill to, it's a good topic for people to look into for themselves too, is just really understanding like emotional intelligence and how that can help you maneuver in a lot of the situations. And
For
just
sure.
as a growing, maturing person, through the years, just I want that's probably a good conversation for another day. Just really speaking about emotional intelligence and how that can really impact a healthy mind and a healthy body,
Yeah, I
healthy
mean,
person, like overall.
yeah, I usually tell people like I might not have the highest IQ, but I got a pretty good a damn good EQ. See, words are hard. IQ ain't there, but my EQ there.
Well, on that note, guys, hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Like always, like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell a cousin to tell a cousin, keep the word going. Like, subscribe, set your notification bells because the Building Savages content will be coming more every week.
Yes, sir.